Very exciting sessions, very exciting products, exciting mood, and that sets a stage for one of the happiest moments for me now, to talk about this industry, which has produced many successful people. It has produces many success stories, both financial success and corporate success. But there are only a handful of legends in this industry, And today, it is really my delight and pleasure to introduce that legend who is amongst us today. And it's not just a success stories that he has created, but also a source of inspiration that I think once you hear him, I don't want to talk much on that, but I think you have read in the newspapers about the new company he launched, Mr. Ashok Soota ji. Please give him a rousing welcome to.
Let's all welcome him with a nice standing ovation, please.
Hello, good afternoon. It really is a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I got in a little early or that you all were running a little behind schedule, simply because the degree of innovation that I've seen here is quite mind-boggling. And it is a pleasure to do that, to see all the young folks literally creating many, many new inventions and going forward with what look like being very path-breaking new technologies. I'd like to just get a feel of your audience, not to say that all the people from the hospital industry are not important. You're the ones who really take care of everybody's lives. But how many of you here are already entrepreneurs or working in startups? Okay, so that's almost like, say, 30+%. And how many of you want to become entrepreneurs? Not already there. Okay, so those who are already entrepreneurs, quite a large proportion, but surprisingly relatively few or more still wanting to become. And the other day I was addressing at Bethany of all places, which is a high school, and they had a program of incredibly bright kids all the way from class 9 to 12. And I asked them the same question. And you will be surprised. Now, this was all potential entrepreneurs, because obviously they're still going through class 10 to +2. And when I asked this question of how many of you want to become entrepreneurs, 60 to 70% of them put up their hands. Quite amazing. Actually, in a way, it's very encouraging, but it's also a matter of concern. And that'll bring me to my next two questions. So how many of you who are already entrepreneurs want to take your company to become public or do an IPO? Okay, so a very decent proportion out of the 30%, I would say half of them, do want to do an IPO. But you've got to remember that in the end, your means of monetizing your wealth, whatever you've created apart from the wonderful technologies, has to be an exit, which comes through an IPO unless you sold your company off. You have a question out there when you raise that? No. But you put up your hand to say you also want to be. Can you just help me repeat his question? He wants an exit, but that would be, so you have to find somebody will buy you out or you'll do an IPO. Those are a strategic sale or an IPO. And now I'll ask you another question here. Those of you who are already entrepreneurs, quite a few actually, how many of you are actually self-funded? So one question, okay, quite a large number. And therefore, the balance of you who are already in entrepreneurship have actually raised funds. So can I see that show of hands? How many already raised funds? Because a couple of people here who came up had good success stories of raising more money than I've seen startups raise in the old IT world. So that's a big. So this is divided almost half and half. I would say a little bit more for self-funding. And then one last question here. How many of you who plan to do sometime an IPO or want to build, actually want to become unicorns? Is that a goal and an ambition? Okay, so I've got a feel and profile of what all of you are on. I'm surprised there's only two. Those kids, they all want to become unicorns, but that's fine. And that's one of the concerns that I have in this. So today I'm really going to talk to you about 2 or 3 different topics actually, but just give you an overview because you can't get into depth on three different subjects in this time. And the first one is really the theme of your program of knowledge and equitable access to healthcare. Of course, your program is equitable access to healthcare, and what I'm talking about is knowledge as provided today by the new organization which I launched, which is really the 4th startup I've done, and that is Happiest Health. Now, you know, all of you are busy inventing things, so this is really not up your street, then that's fine. And yet it's something of great importance to everybody. The pace of change in modern medicine, as well as in integrated medicine, is increasing so rapidly. However, knowledge percolates down to the common person, mostly through the medical community when you get prescribed a new medicine. And here I'm not talking of you as individuals, but really the public at large. And actually, even when you see some of the innovations which I saw earlier just now, and which were presented, by the time they actually reach the individual, it's a very long cycle. People do need to know very early some of these directions which are taking place so that they can avail of some of the benefits that may accrue out of them at the right time. The other thing is that modern science today is really yielding many newer, gentler therapies. There may be cell-based innovations, huge amount of that. I didn't see that today in any of the brief presentations that I had, but it has to be one of the biggest areas for research and new opportunities and new developments. And in this context, I may as well talk a little bit about, so I've told you the overall goal of Happiest Health, and that is to get this knowledge across. Our means of getting this knowledge across is our daily newsletter. Having taken the trouble of coming here to speak, I will ensure that Vasuki gives me everybody's email IDs, and you'll start receiving our morning newsletter. And I hope that you'll make it a daily habit yourselves and to your friends and families who will find it useful. Because the digital enterprise spreads through the process of forwarding to all those you think would be useful. And then through this, we hope to take you through, and all of our audience through, their journey of wellness and health right through their lives. So that is really the goal, and it's something that, you know, it's the site itself is completely free. So our business model is obviously one of the advertising, but we will be creating as we go ahead new profit centers for services which will be paid services. Now, I mentioned that I may as well touch a little bit about the other startup, which in its own way may be of interest to many of the people who are involved in biotech-related innovations. And this is SCAN, which is a completely not-for-profit medical research trust. Now, I started that last year. Incidentally, both of these were really launched first internally, at least, on 5th of April, which happens to be my mother's birthday. And so SCAN focuses on aging and neurological areas where we essentially do projects through fairly large, reputed research entities. And where we've also said that, look, we are not just a funding agency. We will also contribute to the projects, and our area of contribution is going to be only one, and that is the gut microbiome. Now, many of you have actually sort of mentioned elements about that as you go through. And if I see one of the largest opportunities in the biotech space going ahead is the whole area of the gut microbiome. It's just exploding. And if you really look at these neurological problems, there's a whole discovery in the end that maybe all of them actually begin in the gut. So what we are researching is the gut-brain axis and how that then influences not just one, but a whole plethora of what we think as being very dramatically different ailments, all the way from Parkinson's to Alzheimer's to bipolar. There's a common linkage there, and that is the gut microbiome. Areas in which, if somebody had a good, really solid research project, now we are not looking to get funds or capitalize on it. In fact, I don't want to raise a single rupee of money of invoices, let's say, of sales in SCAN. But we will fund projects. The only thing is we jointly own IP, not to be able to leverage the IP for sales or business, but in order to be able to use that IP, because everything is an integrated impact. You're able to use this IP in maybe some other area, and that leads you on to other discoveries. Now I'll come back to Happiest Health. You know, my philosophy, if you will, on this is that wellness and happiness are things you can largely control. Wellness comes through lifestyle, it comes through habits. Happiness, really, if you ask me, and in Happiest Minds, we've obviously done a lot of work on happiness. We live and think happiness. I think there are two things, if I had to pick out, which are of real great importance. One, I would say, is really giving more than you take. And you look back on your moments of pleasure and satisfaction on your lives, you'll realize that is when you got the biggest satisfaction. Whether it was giving to an orphanage, helping somebody else through whatever. Everybody's doing a certain amount of contribution towards society. And it is in those areas, as a privileged community, when you give, that you really find. And giving can be, of course, every day. Giving can be even in relationships as you go ahead. But the other one, again, perhaps not as well understood, is gratitude. And it's amazing how it can change your whole life. Every day you realize how much you have to be thankful for all the blessings that each one of us receives. And in Happiest Minds, we begin each of our meetings by a few of us, it doesn't, saying, hey, what is it that I have to be grateful for today? Somebody may talk about a work achievement, somebody may talk about a personal milestone, somebody may talk about their new baby. We just hear 2 or 3 of those. It changes the whole mood and orientation towards what you're going to discuss. So, wellness and happiness you control. However, and your responsibility, because happiness in particular, I must tell you, is a choice. It's a choice that you make. Somebody can have all sorts of reasons for a grouse against the world, if you will. But in the end, your decision to be happy is a personal choice. Now, however, health, to a certain extent, if you have happiness and wellness, focus, it will lead to good health. But there may be elements in health which are really not in your control. You may be born with, in a sense, genes which are going to give you some problems. And it is in these, again, that some of the work that all of you all are doing and some of the work that we want to highlight in Happiest Health really come into play. One of the most important aspects of that, if you happen to have got a genetic problem, is an early diagnosis. I heard somebody making presentations on diagnostic devices. And I think that's absolutely key. It can be a matter of life and death. I know I had a cancer just the year we started Happiest Minds. But luckily I discovered it in time, more by serendipity than by design. And However, I look at this and say, hey, that shouldn't be the case. People should get a better chance to make those discoveries earlier. And that is what Happiest Health will also be guiding people towards, on how to make those discoveries. Another thing is, how do you manage a problem? Diabetes, somebody mentioned that we are the diabetes capital of the world. India is. And so you dealt with a genetic card, but you can learn to manage the problem. In reality, even though, in fact, we ourselves have written an article in our first few days of Happiest Health saying reversal of diabetes, but of course then asks in a question mark, or is it remission? In reality, you can never reverse diabetes, but you can manage it well. And almost all the ailments which then get affected, there are two very key factors. One is really getting early diagnosis before it spins out of control, and the other one is learning how to manage them better. So, that's just broadly what I wanted to tell you about both Happiest Health and, in a manner of speaking, SCAN. I don't want to get flooded by research proposals, but if you do believe it could fit into those areas and make sense, aging, neurological, more specifically on the gut microbiome, we'd be happy to perhaps get the team to look at it to see if there's a scope for creating a project, which we will then fund. So we allot the funds to all the consortium members, which I said a certain amount gets allocated to SCAN itself for our own contribution to that project. Let me move on now to new opportunities in healthcare. Having just heard you all, in reality, I don't think I need to talk to this audience about it, because that's all I've been hearing for the last 15, 20 minutes that I was here. There's no question today that the hottest space is biotech, where all of you seem to be involved. There's a downside also to it, and the downside is that talent becomes very scarce. In fact, because we're looking at people with research capabilities, I find that everybody has got one foot in the US. Either we're trying to encourage them to come back, or they've just finished an MTech and seeking to do a PhD abroad, or they've done a PhD and they're looking for a fellowship abroad. But it's one of the challenges that you'll have to address, because you can't do anything without great talent. But I was glad to see here that some of our youngsters from IIT aren't rushing abroad, but are creating some of their own, using some of that knowledge to be able to say, let's create a venture. But otherwise, it's really like the IT industry was in the 1990s. It was so hot as a space. I'll tell you, we never took a person then out of the IITs, because invariably, almost all of them landed up in America. So, but that slowed down. Our capacity has increased. There are many more IITs now. That sector in itself is not necessarily saying, hey, everybody's going to make a beeline. They may want to get there after getting a few years of working in an IT company. But here it's different. People recognize the knowledge and the quality of the knowledge that we are generating in India, the quality of our researchers, and therefore that talent is in very, very high demand. The other aspect about all of biotech, and that's the good news for technology, the other part of everything that I've been working on, and the key driver in all of this is really technology, and more specifically, artificial intelligence. And again, I heard somebody or the other make a reference to the involvement of AI. It's something which is never ceasing to come up with newer thoughts, it's becoming more and more powerful every day. And the reason is that there's a learning going on with artificial intelligence. You take that, feed it into virtually almost any other area today of work. It could even be edutech for that matter. Look how much of that is driven by AI. And certainly in the biotech field, I'd say the one key capability apart from your own traditional discipline that you need to bring into your organizations is technology, specifically AI. The other area I'd suggest that you look for opportunities, apart from all these very good opportunities that you all are examining, is the confluence of industries and technologies. Now, I'll give you one example. Everybody's got a concern on how do you deliver medicines to get a more focused impact through, let's say, the delivery of the medicine to the right spot. There's one project which we've just recently decided to fund. They'll come back with their proposal. We've got a consortium comprising of Narayana Health and Narayana Netralia, okay? And again, SCAN itself. So what happened is that somebody was concerned about the fact that they had obviously a large number of people get these. You get blood clots, but this is a blood clot in the eye. And then they found that actually speaking, there's no way that you can get the medicine delivered to the eye. There just isn't enough space. And now see what I was talking about when I mentioned the confluence of technologies. Then one of the team members there with whom we were talking said that, look, Indian Institute of Science has developed a technology whereby the medicine gets delivered through nanobots. So that's where you bring two technologies completely together and you deliver a solution. So it's a project that we've decided to fund. They'll come up with their proposal, it'll go through the process of evaluation, and then we would obviously go ahead with that project. So that was really my second module for today on new opportunity areas in specifically, I'd say, biotech and healthcare. I'm not talking about the services sector at all. It's fairly self-evident. And unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately, a manner of speaking, not to sort of reduce the value of all the services work that all of us have been doing and many of you have put up projects on. But that's the way where India has always flourished. So that's our capability, intrinsic capability, we developed that. If you look at the unicorns today, out of the 150, actually all 150 are in the services space. There's not a single one in the manufacturing space. And that, to my mind, is the need of the hour. So now let me come to entrepreneurship. I typically find two types of entrepreneurs in terms of funding. One are those who are struggling to raise funds, bootstrapping, and it seems that a fairly large proportion of you, because you will suddenly find you hit into a constraint. The second one are those who've actually got too much because they're seeking to become unicorns and money pours in for absolutely at times the wrongest reason. The private equity guy says, okay, now I'll give you another 300 million, and lo and behold, you're already a unicorn. Doesn't matter if you're still losing 200 or 300 million dollars at that time. So the principle that I want to emphasize to you is, raise capital when you can and not when you need it. That's the time to do it. And you do it pretty early in the stage. All of you who are putting in your money, put it in as share capital first. Give yourself the promoter's price on that, and the next round you do should be significantly higher. The moment you attract a person, whether it's a VC, that's when you'll get leverage for the money you've done. If you've finished off all your money and you go and seek money outside, at that time, somebody is going to squeeze you because they're going to say, well, this is all I'm going to pay you, and you're desperate and you'll go ahead and do it because you don't know how to run your business. So plan your need of cash all along. But another corollary to that is that if you're going to do, typically many of you who've already started the process of raising funds are going to raise multiple rounds of funds as you go through your lives. And I believe there must be a roadmap for that journey. A lot of this is described in this book which I have co-authored called Entrepreneurship Simplified. I was quite pleased to learn that you all are giving away a copy of that to some of your prize winners. And I'm not trying to propagate the book per se, I must tell you. But I believe for all of you who are interested in entrepreneurship, in reality, you can hardly ever get a better roadmap which covers the entire gamut of all the issues which come up in the entrepreneurial journey. So then I'll come down to another principle here, and which is why I actually am never in favor of bootstrapping and struggling for very long on that. It's far easier to run a large company than a small one. There'll always be setbacks. You're far better equipped to handle those as a large entity. You can hire talent, which you can otherwise would not be able to afford. So I would really recommend that people move very quickly beyond the bootstrapping stage. Though again, I was perhaps not surprised, that happens everywhere. At least half of those in entrepreneurship today are really bootstrapping themselves. They have not raised funds. The other angle that you should really look after is, look out for new competition, which can come from any direction, because particularly with this confluence of technologies, with the digital world, people are now, everything really runs on a platform. And a platform can be allowed to do multiple things. And the moment you have that, somebody who's not in one space says, hey, but I can get into this, because I've created this beautiful platform. This platform has its core layer, it's got its app extensions available, it's got an AI layer. So now I can extend this to multiple markets. And that is why competition is now becoming more and more intense. And finally, on the section of entrepreneurship, I want to just say one thing. Is anybody here, there are at least 3 or 4 who want to become unicorns. I don't think we have any. You know, I'm going to tell you, don't aspire to become a unicorn. If you really look at the story of the unicorns around, more than half of them. So you become a unicorn, and very quickly you're on to $2 billion, etc. I'm surprised nobody has started measuring. We've got 150 already and $1 billion plus. How many have moved into 5 and 10? But look at them, they're all burning up cash. 90% of them are burning up cash, even at that level. And then ultimately the investors will drive them to go public, because I've already put in 500 million between 5 of us. Some of the early stage guys have got an exit through selling to the next level of private equity player. That guy now wants his exit. How many more rounds are you going to do? And therefore they drive you to going public. And when that is done, what will happen is that more than half of those, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you more than half of those entities which listed are running below their listing price. Now, I have a philosophy that anytime you list, there must be a 30% appreciation on day one. And the moment you get that, see the reverse impact. The market begins to say, hey, this is a great stock to own, and then you get an upward spiral. On the moment, if you list and it starts declining, then everybody is in the business of, within a few months it will start declining. Early stage people came on. Then what happens? You get a downward spiral. So in the end, you may end up with a market cap which is pretty decent, even in the way that the PE guys went. But who got hurt? The retail shareholder got hurt. And therefore, if you can make and earn their goodwill, after all, so the lesson is, okay, if you must be a unicorn, but please do everything in the interests of your future shareholders, not the guys who funded you. I'll close with another brief thought, particularly again addressed to the fact that half the audience is either into entrepreneurship or into wanting to become entrepreneurs, but it is applicable really to everybody. And I'm saying that the journey of life itself must be a joy. All of us get trapped at various stages of our lives and saying, hey, I've got to achieve this goal, I'm working towards this, and that does not have to be at the cost of happiness. And again, I'll make the statement that happiness is a choice. It is your life. Choose wisely, choose happiness. So thank you very much. We'll take some questions, because I always hate giving monologues, and we'll take the questions and move on to your awards. Please.
Sir, what is your tip to B2B MedTech device companies?
You'll have to hold this close to your mouth.
MedTech device companies, B2B product companies, these are very difficult to raise money and scale up. What is your tip to them?
Yeah, well, you know, from whatever I heard you say, there was something about a product, and then you said it's very difficult to raise money on scale. So are you saying that in a product that's much more difficult? You know, it is yes and no. The reason being that if you get the product idea bought out. And typically, all you have to do is to be able to show a working prototype or a path to a prototype. Then the valuation goes up dramatically, far more dramatically than it will do in a services setup. And you will find people willing to fund that. So I don't see any reason to be diffident about it. If you've developed a reputation already, and I therefore am a big believer in saying, hey, look, don't just finish college, and I think that's not the case here, and then jump into entrepreneurship immediately. Because when you have got experience behind you, you developed a reputation, that is what helps somebody to give you money. They're not looking at your business here. They're saying, hey, this team or this person knows what they've done, they've demonstrated and delivered success, therefore we'd like to fund that entity. When I started both my entities, for the matter is that I got phone calls with the entrepreneurs, with the VCs, before we actually started. And that happened because I'd got a career which was built and a reputation built. But that's important to work towards that. But coming back to product and service, there is another interesting process taking place today. And that is software as a service, where really you're delivering your product as a service. And you can see that India is becoming huge success stories on SaaS and PaaS. So, and we are, there are at least a few startups generating lots of money and very high valuations. Many of them have gone and got listed even on NASDAQ. So that's a space to certainly examine.
Sir, this is Dr. Mahendra Narwaria from Ahmedabad. I'm an obesity and diabetes surgeon, and I'm impressed by your talk, and I'm so much impressed about your research on microbiota. But you look at these diseases, diabetes and obesity, even gut microbiota plays the major role. So, and it is linked with your brain as well. So we all Indians who are sitting here, we are lean fat people. Means our muscle mass is less and visceral fat is more, and that visceral fat is more because of gut microbiota. So if you can do something to modify it, people lose weight, and even your diabetes is reversible. Even if we lose 10% of weight, the diabetes get reversed. And I do a lot of reversal of diabetes because of a bariatric surgery. Therein again we change the gut microbiota by rearranging the intestine in two different directions.
Sure. I agree with you completely. That's exactly the theory behind much of what we are doing in SCAN. So one of our projects, for example, is a diabetes management or reversal, if you will. We use the word reversal there because if you brought it down to a certain level that it remains under control, it'll become like a reversal.
Medically,
it may be a permanent remission in a manner of speaking. And it all goes back to that. There's another angle, and that is that, look, so much of the data and the medication that we are all provided and prescribed is all based on Western samples. And there's hardly any Indian data which led into this. So you go to a doctor, they're not bad people, but that's their life habit. They've always been prescribing. And I can tell you this for myself. I got prescribed at a certain stage both statin as well as metformin. Okay? And I say, hey, why do I need these? But the doctor just prescribed them as a matter of habit. Then I chose not to take either, but then working on programs to be able to bring both under control. But that is the essence of what the research that SCAN is doing. Not the essence, it's one of the very important areas. So we've got a project in each one of those two, diabetes and cholesterol.
And obesity.
And it's also the area where Happiest Health is seeking to spread knowledge.
Thank you, sir.
There's a hand there. Oh, okay. I'll take this gentleman. He seems to have had his hand up, and I'll come back to you.
So you said, happiness is a choice. So one of the things is also who's responsible for your health.
Who's responsible for your health?
Yeah. So previously you said your parents are responsible, the government is responsible, but ultimately I think we are responsible ourselves for our health. I think when we struggle with the business models, one of the things you spoke about SaaS being there. Can you see healthcare as a service, HaaS, being the next frontier?
That's happening all the time. Actually, that's already happening all over. I'm sure there's so many startups in the way delivering healthcare. But you made a question about, is health also a choice? It is largely a choice. If you have the right habits, the right attitude, you're focused on your wellness, You have built happiness. Happiness is a very important part of good health. That is where you have a choice. But if you got a genetic issue and you got a cancer now, so that was not something under your control. How you then manage it is what you then happen to come under control. And there, very clearly, there's some things you'll learn to manage, like the diabetes issue. The moment you find it and you start focusing on the right things, the other ones will come through early diagnosis. And I literally mean it's a matter of life and death if you don't get those diagnoses early.
I'm a physician, but do you think we're moving into do-it-yourself medication over a period of time? Because now the patient himself is getting empowered, especially on the gut by himself.
So I won't get into that area because there's a lot of controversy on what you should do. And somebody told me as a joke yesterday, a very renowned journalist for that matter, and she was talking about Happiest Health with me. So she said, if you go in the US, the doctor will say, if you come to me for a session, I'm going to charge you, say, $100. If you come with your own diagnosis, I'll charge you $50. But if you come with a Google diagnosis, then I'm going to charge you double of the original one. So the point is the doctors don't like that. But and there, I must tell you the objective of our site. Our site is not to say, hey, become the doctor, or this is the diagnosis. Frankly, if you ask me, the main thing is, it gives you the knowledge to ask the right questions from your doctor. How many of you get time? How many of us get time? I go to a doctor and he'll get exasperated because I've come with a list of questions, and I'll get my time with the person. But that doesn't happen. They're all in a rush. They go here and hear the problem. Okay, so you got this cholesterol, you brought us the results, go and do the test. Okay, here's your statin prescription. And we want to provide the knowledge to question some of that.
Thank you.
Right, gentlemen.
Hello, sir. I am Dr. Adarsh here. I am a surgeon, and I have invented a medical device, and we have been speaking to investors in India and US as well. So I find that it's very easy to connect to investors in US because they are more mature, especially in medtech, as compared to the investors in India. And I want to be in India, and I want to contribute to the Indian economy. How do I do that? And they have been calling, come here and register your company in US, but how do we overcome that?
See, I'll tell you, the Indian VC scene is pretty mature now. You can't say that, hey, they don't listen or whatever. Even if I see the number of people here who said that they have raised their own funds, I can tell you when I used to meet IT startups, about 80% of them would never have had, maybe 90% would never have had money. You got to realize also the angle from a VC. They receive hundreds of proposals, and if those proposals are not well thought through, they are not clear, they are not differentiated, there has to be a unique value proposition in which something that you're going to fund. Then they're going to reject it. So one of the VCs, who's a very good friend of mine, says they actually don't even look at 90% in terms of calling them for an appraisal. After that, you have the 10, and maybe 4 or 5% will go through. So they do a lot of screening out. And I believe that would equally happen in the West. There's probably even more this thing about screening out. But there's money available there, there's money available here. Very often there may be American or European VC funds operating here. And actually that is probably your best way of getting the money in India rather than going abroad. I'll take one more since I've seen now there are 4 hands out here. Let's take 2 more at least. Or I'll take all the 3 who put up their hands. I know you're going to vacate your hall at some time because I asked how you could be having a reception so early, and so I'll keep that in mind in responding to you. Yeah, but I'm going to push off immediately after the next thing. Okay.
May I? So how do you reconcile happiness with ambition, considering disquiet is one of the key drivers for growth?
Yeah, but this is exactly the essence. And that is that if you have success without happiness, then it's not success anyway. So once you accept that, you don't have to reconcile it. It's not an either or issue. Happiness comes first. If you're not able to get it, then what is the value of your life? And I'll quote you Aristotle, who says the purpose and aim of all human existence is happiness. So can I get the second one?
Very inspiring talk, sir, and I'm a great admirer of your work. I have a different question. What is your thought process when you pick up the name of your organization? All are hit in Dalal Street.
Well, it's not some of these. Now, let's take Mindtree.
Yeah.
We actually got the name after doing a search on Name It, in which a site available, and we got some 700 names shortlisted. We wanted the name, but it was not available. So then we liked it so much, we said, let's do Mindtree Consulting, which was available. But you have to get a URL of that name now. In today's world, if you don't have that, then you're obviously in a mess. Now, there's a very lucky ending to that story. And that is that after we'd been in operation for a year or two, we'd already built a brand presence. Our marketing manager based in the US, he called up the guy who owned Mindtree. And that guy said, it's a wonderful time you got in touch with me. He was a studio in New York. I shut the studio yesterday. I'll sell it to you for $5,000. We would have paid him $100,000 by then. But he was a good, decent guy. He wasn't the guy who'd hogged it up. Happiest Minds was much more a thought-out process, maybe because I had begun dwelling on the theme of happiness for a long time. I have a sort of a communication which I send out to all my team. A lot of this had begun to feature that. I don't really talk about results. They're generally, it's called snapshots. I think it's a time buzzer for me, probably. Okay. And so it was just that. I had happiness in my mind. It made sense too. So it focuses on happiness. Mindtree is cerebral. And this one really does focus on happiness. Last one. Because this guy is already standing up, so we'll.
Hello. Sir, I don't have any of the questions as of such for you. Sir, only a thing when you had just spoken about the happiness, a very brief intro from my side. I'm an ex-Happiest Mind employee.
Oh, very good. Nice to hear that.
So,
okay. But I wish you were not necessarily ex, but if you're doing some startup and something very good, that's good.
So, when it comes down to happiness, I'm just happy that I'm standing and talking
Very
in front
good.
of you.
Well, nice to
Thank
meet you
Thank
here.
sir.
You done?
Mic on the podium. We're going to have the Trailblazer Awards, initiated to recognize the pioneers of digital transformation of healthcare who have overcome these challenges to enable the successful adoption of such solutions in their respective organizations. Let's hear that from Mr. Ashok Soota, please. So thank you so much for being here with us today. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us. We'll begin with the awards. I'd like to call upon Mr. J.P. Dwivedi, CIO, Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center, and Dr. Rajasa, Medical Director, Curative, to please receive their awards. This is for AI-based histopathology solutions. Mr. J.P. Dwivedi and Dr. Rajasa, can we hear it for them, please? I'll request our award achievers to please take your seats, and we'll have each of you talking.
I've been thinking a lot. It is such an honor to be in front of Soota sir about this happiest minds. Generally, happiness rarely comes here. No? Either there is a lot of crap or chaos, or at best it is clean, means nothing. So happiness comes from generosity, and generosity comes from heart. So maybe your fifth initiative may be happiest heart, sir.
Next, we'd like to call upon Dr. Rajiv Tangri, National Head Histopathology and Cytopathology, Dr. Ravindra Agarwal, Director Lab Management and Operational Excellence, Dr. Lal Pathlabs, and Mr. Samrat from MedPrime Technologies. This award is for deploying several smart microscopes in various remote diagnostic centers across India. Let's hear that for them, please. Yes, we can do this louder. Yeah. Next, I'd like to call upon Mr. Bhupendra Solanki from Sakra World Hospital and Shayato Raha, founder and CEO My Healthcare. This award is for OPD transformation and digital patient journey solutions. A hearty round of applause. Please take your seats. And last but not the least, we'd like to call upon Mr. Manish Kumar Rai from Zydus Hospitals. And this award is going to him for AI-based lab report auto-certification solution. So while each of our award winners are going to talk a little about their deployment later, since Ashok ji has to leave, so can we take one nice picture with you and all our winners today? We'll take one consolidated photo, yes, please, with everyone. With all your awards. Let's hear that for all our award winners for the various achievements. And once again, a big round of applause to Mr. Ashok Soota. So thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you. I'll request all our awardees to please take your seats. Or we'll do that later. Thank you so much. Congratulations once again to all the winners. Yes. We'll request you to Mr. Ashok Soota, sir, please, could you join us back for a moment again on the dais? Our startups joining us on stage, we'll request you to please give them your book. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.